middle powers must act together, because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu.
Somewhere Europe has to grow out of the mindset that Europe's problems are the world's problems, but the world's problems are not Europe's problems.
चुन चुन करके हिसाब लेना ये मेरी फितरत है.
Why should it be a problem? If I'm smart enough to have multiple options, you should be admiring me.
भारत झुकने वाला भी नहीं.
The rise of India will be determined by India. It will be determined by our strength, not by the mistakes of others.
The old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And in this video, we are going to talk about why Prime Minister Narendra Modi may be the most consequential leaders, or one of the consequential leaders of the 21st century. See, under Prime Minister Modi, India's economy, foreign policy, national security, and global standing have undergone a historic transformation. Whether you love him or hate him, India today is fundamentally different from India of 2013 and prior to that, right? See, his supporter believed that Prime Minister Modi did not just simply govern India. He changed India's trajectory as a civilization and a great power. So in this video, we are going to talk about five reasons why Prime Minister Narendra Modi may be the most consequential leader of the 21st century. Now, when I say consequential, I mean that leaders who do not just win elections or something. I mean that leaders that alter the destiny of their nations. So let's get going, guys. Let's get started. Please do like and subscribe, and please do go and check out my other videos. Okay, so let's get going. Let's get started. All right, welcome back again, guys. So we're going to talk about all this in five points. Okay, and let me actually share my slide real quick. So the 5 points would be Modi's foreign policy, Modinomics, national security, civilizational Bharat, and the long shadow of Modi, why his impact may outlast his era. Okay, and that's what it's going to be. And so let's get started with the first one, that is the Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy. So once again, let me share my screen here real quick. See, the geopolitical architecture, you have to understand the geopolitical architecture if you really want to understand Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy. Okay, and so when you look into it, when he took the power, when he came to power as a prime minister, India's standing was around, say, $2.5 trillion economy, give take $2.5 trillion economy. Currency was already depreciating and devaluing at the same time. Then India was running a heavy trade deficit. The problem was so severe, I'll tell you, the problem was so severe that the previous governments had signed lots of free trade agreements. And those free trade agreements were actually signed with the developing countries, not some developed country. Okay, so what happened is that they signed those free trade agreements. They started to import lots and lots of stuff from all these countries, like ASEAN countries, then Indonesia, then Middle East countries, and then you had Australia, Canada, all that was there. But most of it was that India was just importing left and right. Same thing when they signed the free trade agreement with China, Russia. They had never signed any free trade agreement. There is no free trade agreement with China either. But all in all, my point is that they were just importing stuff. Okay, and that led to the currency depreciation. And there was almost, like, I would say, 40% drop in the currency. So that's that. But after that, when Prime Minister Modi took the office, he raised India's global status from emerging market to a major geopolitical pole. How he did that? He did that by uh, doing things like Make in India, Made in India. Then business deals were signed. All these business deals were being signed by uh, with they had to sign the business deals with technology transfer. Okay, then government started to provide lots and lots of support to the startups and all, and now India is the third largest, in fact the highest in startups, and I would say third largest destination for unicorns meaning the companies that are billion-dollar companies, startups that turn into billion-dollar company. So all that happened because of the initiatives and the vision of the government. And you just recently saw the AI summit, right? What happened with the AI summit? With the AI summit, lots of top-notch AI companies showed up in India. Why is that? It's because India is a top market for artificial intelligence. All these companies like ChatGPT, Claude, XAI, they're all investing so much money into it that if they cannot find a proper market for it, they're going to lose the money. That will be the AI bubble. But anyways, let's come back to the subject. Then, so let me actually share my slide again. So that was the global status. Then let's talk about the multipolarity. So, Prime Minister Modi, when he came to the office, he started to balance India's relation with the United States, the Russia, Europe, Gulf, Japan, Africa, and the global South. And I mean, everybody knows that no other country runs this many lanes all at once. Now, here's the interesting part. Interesting part is that when he took the office, before that, Indian government was pretty reluctant on having a proper relationship with the United States. And either it was because of Chinese pressure or because of some sort of historical reasons or whatever that was, but they were. Okay. Now, when Prime Minister Modi came to the power, then he started to change that. And actually, the credit goes to the deceased or the India's defense minister, Mr. Manohar Parrikar, rest his soul. But these were the guys who actually brainstormed this whole thing. The idea behind the brainstorming this was that when Prime Minister Modi took the office, there were no border infrastructure. That was a major national security threat for India. Now, if India was going to build any border infrastructure, then clearly there was going to be Chinese incursion. There will be problems. And to counter those problems, or to, I would say, limit those problems or the impact of those problems, India realized that, hey, we need somebody as powerful as China, at least at that time, that can actually support us, if not literally, at least verbally. So that was the foundational actually thesis of going aligning with the United States. And the second foundational reason for aligning with the United States was Indo-Pacific, because United States is one market that can actually absorb all the Indian export. So if India wants to cancel out all the trade deficit and in fact have a trade surplus, then India needed United States, because India wanted less import and more export. Okay, right now there is $300 billion of trade deficit, and I have talked about this in many of my videos. Okay, so that's when the Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy shifted towards it. And you, as I'm saying today to you, you saw what happened with in Doklam in 2022, 2020, and all that, right? All these things happen. So those things happen. Those were the calculated uh, concerns that Indian government had. Anyways, so that's how they started to manage. Now the question was that how we that India is now friends with the United States, how are we going to manage the relationship with Russia? And relationship with Russia, that was in the beginning, actually, in the first term, that was a sort of tricky problem to solve. But ultimately, Russians on their own gave the solution to India for that. That was when they went after Ukraine. And sure enough, India saw the opportunity. India was like, okay, this is our chance, let's do it. Now, then came a very defining moment. Okay. Defining moment came for India during the G20 presidency, when India's 2023 G20 presidency was its global coming out moment, when the African Union was added into the G20 permanently. And that big G20 became G21 actually. Okay. Then, and then in 2023, PM Modi actually announced what? He announced the IMEC corridor on the same day, where he said that this will be 1,000 years from now, it will be 100 years or 1,000 years from now, it will be said that the start of IMEC was in India. India laid the foundational stone for it. So that's what these things were. But among all these things, uh, the most important thing, or the most important pillar of Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy has been its strategic autonomy. That no matter what it is, India will always make its own decisions. India is not going to bow down to some pressure, some random pressure or anything. That's why India always bought Russian oil. India abstained at the United Nations, and nothing happened. India has been buying Russian S-400. India has been buying Russian hardware all along. Nothing happened. So that's the strategic autonomy. Then you saw the result of this powerful uh, foreign policy, strong foreign policy, that whose primary pillar is strategic autonomy. You saw the result of it in Hormuz too, where United States was complaining about nobody's helping them in the Strait of Hormuz. India said, "Hey, we don't need to help you, and we don't need your help because you created the problem." So India said that we can help ourselves, and they went there and they got all their ships out. So that was the foundational pillar. All these things were handled by Modi government. And when everybody, all the countries have their uh, what you call it, their oil prices going up, energy prices are going up in other countries. Uh, India doesn't have that problem, simply because of this foresight. The government saw these things coming. Okay, this is what happens when you are in good terms with all the sides. Why? Because then you also get the warning, you also get the hints from both sides that, hey, we are planning to do this, you secure whatever you want to secure. Why, you think that United States didn't tell India about it, or Israelis didn't warn India that, hey dude, we are going to do this, you might want to be careful. Why do you think Prime Minister Modi went to Israel and he said that India will stand with Israel forever? Pretty much that's what he said. Why do you think that was? Because he was aware that was going to happen. Anyways, but the most important thing of all happened in May 2025. That was the power move. India destroyed Pakistan's terror infrastructure and brought Pakistan to its knees in just 88 hours. That was Operation Sindoor. Prime Minister Modi's foreign policy, also the most important part of the foreign policy, India's foreign policy has shifted. In fact, I would say from 2013 and all, is the response to Pakistan. Before that, Indian governments were like, okay, let's not do it. Let's send some files, this, that. It was just a very piss poor response simply because governments just didn't want to go and do it. It takes lots of work, okay, because you have to go do the work, establish the relationship with the Middle East. Let's say you can establish a relationship with Middle East, how are you going to establish the relationship with the United States? And that was the fundamental problem. But then when Prime Minister Modi took the office, these things started to change. Pakistan's isolation started, and ultimately Pakistan became what? Pakistan became isolated. Pakistan was in a financial action task force grey list for almost, it's been there for past five, I would say about 5 6 years or 10 years each, every time they are there. Okay, so when, so what India did, see, what India did is that India destroyed Pakistan's terrorist infrastructure. India bombed the crap out of Pakistan. Now here's the thing, guys. Okay, see, lots of you may take it lightly, but you have to understand that a country that has nuclear power, that has nuclear weapons, then bombing that country unilaterally just like that in itself shows some serious balls. Okay, it takes some serious courage to do something like that, and shows some serious capabilities to bring down a country like that in 88 hours. Just surrender it. They were ready and surrendered. And lots of people said that, oh, those nukes are not Pakistani nukes, those are American nukes, and this and that. But you have to understand this, that America doesn't have to put all its nuke in Pakistan, quite frankly. Okay. And whatever reason they might be putting into it, lots of people say these things, but I don't really buy all that. Okay. There's no fundamental proof. Pakistanis have always uh, said that I always tried to hide their nuclear weapon program from Americans. And all Americans just maintain a relationship with Pakistan, so that at least with a good relationship, Pakistanis are not going to give their nuclear weapons to the terrorist outfits. That's all. Okay. And then, anyways, coming back to the point. So all these things happen. While these things happen, Americans tried to again put threaten India with tariffs and all that. These are the things that happen under Prime Minister Modi. And he is the man who actually did not even take the call from the President of the United States. The guy who was actually inviting everyone to the White House just to insult them. PM Modi simply did not take his call. So finally, there were back channels who were like, okay, please, let's get them to talking terms at least, and this and that. So finally, President of the United States said, oh, my friend, and this and that. But Prime Minister Modi still responded to it, but he let it go after that. And to this day, that's the foreign policy. That's a strong leader. Okay, let's move into, after all this, let's move into Modinomics. Let's talk about how the economic challenges he's handling. Okay, so guys, see, we saw that with the India's foreign policy, Prime Minister Modi, he made India a global power that is recognized by other major powers as such. Pretty much every power that's out there, they're saying that India is a great power, India is a great power. All that is because of his administration and its foreign policy. But when we talk about the Modinomics meaning that how India, Bharat, became an execution state, not just creating not just making policies, not just creating all those laws and rules and everything, but execution at scale. How India started to do that, that's what's called Modinomics. Let's talk about that. Let me share my screen real quick. Okay, so what happened when you look at the data? I talked about the GDP and all, right? GDP, since he took the office, GDP has doubled. Like, let me GDP has doubled. If you look into it, his administration has lifted 135 million people from extreme poverty. 14 billion plus UPI transactions per month happen in 2024, and it's just growing, okay? 10 times the defense export. This is the defense export growth. Before he was in the office, before that, India was just importing. There was no talk of exporting stuff, okay? So then he created this jam trinity, that is the world largest welfare delivery system, that is Jan Dhan, Aadhaar, and mobile UPI. So this is 38 trillion dollar rupee disbursed directly. Subsidy leakage collapsed from 30 to 40% to near zero, meaning that they're used whenever on the name of subsidy. Whenever government actually release the money, that subsidy money used to go into corruption and all that. That's what the whole entire intent used to be. But after Janadhan, Aadhaar, UPI and all that, what happened is that that money directly goes to the people. Okay, so he used that technology to its advantage, and now he is showing this technology, how what India can actually do, to all these so-called developed countries. US, UK, Germany, France, Canada, they all, you just name it. Okay. So and just recently India has sold this BrahMos cruise missile. It's a supersonic cruise missile. Then Philippines, then they've signed the deal with Vietnam. Now on the other side, Chinese are getting scared about it too. Okay, so and then India is selling its defense hardware to Armenia and all too. Now India is actually improving its relationship with Azerbaijan. Why is that? US organized that peace treaty with between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and now India, Prime Minister of India, actually he has sent greetings to Azerbaijan and all that too, simply because they want to cut Pakistan off from there too, and Chinese influence, of course, from the Mediterranean, because Azerbaijan is the key for China to enter the Europe. Okay, after the Russia-Ukraine war, Chinese just cannot go to Europe through Russia. Before that, they used to do that. Okay, but now they have to go through the Europe from Kazakhstan and all that. Then through now, right now they're passing through Georgia and other countries into Europe. But they are thinking to actually go through Azerbaijan, then the disputed part of Armenia, take that and then go into the Mediterranean, and then from there get into Europe. That's their plan. But that plan will be busted. This fight has been going on for quite some time now. Okay, this is not today's thing, but anyways, so so we talked about all these, right? Make in India push, like for example, he introduced Make in India so that India can become self-reliant. Why? Because self-reliance is the key to anything. If you want to maintain your national sovereignty, then you need something like that. Okay, Make in India, Made in India. Now the power of Make in India is Make in India and Made in India is that India can become the largest producer, and India is already a largest consumer. So whatever India will export, it will be after the domestic consumption. So any company that invests in India, okay, is not going to take the loss no matter what. They won't have to look for the market elsewhere. Okay, that's the beauty of it. And these are the strategies that just don't show up at your doorstep overnight. You have to think it through. It requires lots of brainstorming. It requires lots of intelligence in itself. Okay, so because of all this Made in India and Make in India and the defense manufacturing and all that, it is because of all this, India's once dead defense export sector has been growing rapidly. We all know that thing, like, right? How there was literally no defense export, but after the government has taken certain steps, now the defense manufacturing has privatized. Lots of things are being taken by the private companies, private players. Now, because of that, defense export has grown 10 times, right? Then there is an infrastructure push, highways, airports, ports, rail, logistics, and border infrastructure. All that is being done. I mean, there are loads and loads of airports are being built right now in India to maintain and improve the connectivity. You have Vande Bharat is the prime example as a train, railroad, right? Then I have known lots of places in India myself where there used to be no airport. Now there's like big ass airport, international airport, that too. Then ports. If you go look into the IMEC corridor from end to end, it is all the ports that are there. They are actually built by India. Whether it is Haifa, whether it is you go into Mumbai, whether it is in UAE, or you go on the other side, on the eastern side, uh, in Papua Guinea, or towards the Australia and all that, most of these ports are built by India. And this IMEC game has been going on for quite some time, even though IMEC was announced in 2023. But it is the key to everything, to a stronger Indo-Pacific, to a for trade, for India's trade into Europe and Africa, actually. So all these games are being going on. Okay, it's not just that. Uh, yeah, let's sign free trade agreement and then import stuff. Okay, it's not just about growth. It is state capacity for, I would say, self-reliance, right? And then government has also launched manufacturing push through the production linked incentive schemes. Then because of all these things, India has become one of the fastest growing major economies. And it is actually third largest in terms of purchasing power parity. Now, purchasing power parity, see, the purchasing power parity is not about a country uh, is able to buy stuff. No, purchasing power parity actually is the indicative of economic activity. So all these things that I just talked about, they are the economic activity. They boost the economic activity. They have a very high return of investment. Okay, and this is why the purchasing power parity is the better indicative in see better, I would say, measure of a country's economy rather than the nominal GDP. Okay, now and India is also, see, under Prime Minister Modi, India is also set to become world's third largest economy by the end of this decade. In fact, India's complete the total export is going to reach $1 trillion by the end of this year or early next year. Okay, and India is working very rapidly to actually minimize that trade imbalance, the trade deficit that exists. So because of that, India is working on signing the free trade agreement with the Eurasian Union. Now, some of you will be like, okay, so what Eurasian Union is going to do? See, here's the thing. Okay, thing is that India and Russia do trade in ruble. All right, and since India and Russia trade in ruble, so Russia cannot just take all the rupee, and India just cannot take all the ruble and invest into its market all the time. So that ruble needs to be spent somewhere else. India just cannot go and send it to Russia all the time. So the Eurasian Union actually trades in ruble too. So once India signs the free trade agreement with the Eurasian Union, then India actually gets the opportunity to send all that ruble to the Eurasian Union. Now, just recently, if you notice that Russians have actually signed defense treaty with the Afghanistan to sell them all this stuff. Now, what's that's gonna happen? What's gonna happen with because of that is down the line that Afghanistan actually may start accepting ruble and rupee as the legal tender too, as a currency. Because once Afghanistan starts to accept ruble, then what's going to happen is that it will be a lot easier for Russians to sell that to Afghanistan. Okay, it's not just that Russians want to do something, but whatever they want to do, they cannot sell it in dollar. You have to understand this. Only way they can do that is when the trade is in national currency. And how that can happen is if Afghanistan accepts both currencies, rupee and ruble. With rupee, it will trade with India, and with ruble, it will trade in Russia. So this way, Afghanistan will also become another point of what? Rupee ruble exchange. Okay? So that's what the whole entire game is. That's what Modinomics is. Now, the third reason that makes Prime Minister Modi the consequential leader, one of the most consequential leaders, is the national security aspect. He took, as soon as he took the office after the oath ceremony, and our first thing he did is that he met his military command, the intelligence, and everybody, all the bodies that are there, the government entities, government bodies that are there, that are responsible for the national security. He immediately met with all of them. And from that point on, India's doctrine started to change. There was a shift from reactive posture to deterrence posture. Okay, and there is a big difference between the two. Okay, let me actually share my slide here real quick. So, with the deterrence doctrine, what is the difference? See, reactive posture meaning that when something happens, after that you react to it, and you react to it in a very passive way, like other governments did. But with the new doctrine, India has only raised the bar. First time they responded to the attack by sending the special forces across the border to destroy the infrastructure. Then second time when this happens, they bombed the Balakot. That was another thing that they raised the bar, and this time it was so called inside the Pakistani territory. And third time, we all know what happened. Now, with that being said, the gravity of this thing, or the importance of this thing, is with the Operation Sindoor, is that India is the only country in history. Okay, India is the only country in history to have bombed and destroyed another nuclear armed country. You will never see this happening between two nuclear armed nations. That's what Pakistan thought. And then India bombed Pakistan's nuclear targets too. Certain nuclear targets that were not actually shared by Pakistan to India, but India actually bombed them too. And just to deliver the message that, hey, we know where your stuff is. We are going to bomb the crap out of it if you really mess with us. So, because of this stronger response to terrorism and cross border threats, India took this posture. Okay, and India declared that terrorism is also now the act of war. Terrorism will no longer be treated as law and order issue. It is now classified as an act of war with military consequences. Countries who will support it will also be bombed too. There will be no differentiation. India is not going to differentiate between terrorist and the government. If terrorist is found in your country, then you will be held responsible no matter what. And that's what India's new posture is as far as national security is concerned. So, then next thing that India did is the border infrastructure. Now, if you look into it, I talked about this briefly, right? The border infrastructure. After Galwan 2020, India accelerated border roads, bridges, air strips across LAC at unprecedented pace. And China's advantage that was there, it eroded. Okay, those salami tactics are not going to work anymore. And that was the whole strategy, because border infrastructure, previous governments, they just didn't know how to actually do it. In fact, there was lack of will as well. It's just like any other incompetent leadership. It was that's all it was. Then the latest thing in this national security architecture is the Turkey doctrine. See, India, in this matter, India actually took measurable economic and diplomatic actions against Turkey and Azerbaijan for supporting Pakistan during Op Sindhu. But now India is building relationship with Azerbaijan. Okay, whereas for Turkey, India is now building its ties with Cyprus. Cyprus is a very big and major pain point for Turkey, and India is heavily arming Cyprus. Now, the problem with, I will talk about that in detail in some other video, okay? Because this is gonna take too long otherwise, and I'm trying to avoid that. But long story short, there are certain things. Turkey's biggest fear is that Turkey was supporting Pakistan verbally, and there are historical reasons too for Gillen group and all that. That actually the group that actually led to 2016 coup attempt in Turkey. But there is lots of other things behind it. But I will talk about that some other time. But right now, so Turkey's main problem became with India. They were using just verbal thing that okay, we support Kashmir, but we support Pakistan on Kashmir and this and that. But ultimately, now Turkey's biggest fear is that India actually will build certain military infrastructure in Cyprus. Now, what Turkey wants is that in the northern Cyprus areas, there are some oil and natural gas fields and all that too. So Turkey thinks that keep get that and all, get their hands on it. But the problem is that their biggest fear is that if India gets into that region, then chances are that they will take it. And Cyprus is part of IMEC as well. So you have one more thing to add to IMEC as at that point, right? So that's the biggest fear. They don't want any other player or stakeholder into this whole entire thing. Okay, so that's another thing that India has changed. Not It's not just into the subcontinent. Now India has expanded its sphere of influence, that we will handle this thing accordingly. Yes, the India will have to build partnership. That's why India is building partnership with Israel. India has built partnership with UAE, because UAE and Saudis are not in very good terms. But and that actually is the trick. Then UAE and Yemen are in good terms. Then you have Israel is there. Israel is a major threat to Turkey. So all these equations are being arranged for what? For the national security. Like Americans say that they're going to bomb Iraq, but it's a national security threat. So now it's a national security threat for India too. Okay. So now in the last thing we learned that how Prime Minister Modi changed the psychology of Indian national security. He completely changed the whole entire meaning of it. Now threat was not just coming from across the border, and threat was not just only one country. Threat was coming from across the border, I mean somewhere else too, in some other region. So now the threat perception has changed. What is considered a threat on national security, internal, external, everything has changed, and everything is being seen as such wherever they are. Okay. Now, but with the national security comes the next thing. Next thing that actually I would say is even more consequential is India's own identity. I think lots of people who actually are in the English speaking countries, they don't even know what is India's real name. India's real name is Bharat. It's not Hindustan, it's not Hind or something. It is Bharat. That's what we call it, Bharat. Okay. So what Prime Minister Modi did is he reminded India that India is Bharat. It's not India. That's the British identity. And if you go into watch my intro, that says that Bharat chukne wala bhi nahi hai, meaning that India is not going to bow down to anybody. So he reminded India of its civilizational roots, civilizational power. What he did, let me share my slide for that too. What he did is Ram Mandir. It was in his party's manifesto. Okay, it was a 500 years of litigation that was ended, consecrated by Prime Minister Modi and the Nehruvian settlement on India's cultural identity permanently undone. When Nehru was Prime Minister, he was basically his British had tasked him for proselytization. That's when all the missionaries and everything started to pour into India. Goal to convert, to hurt India's civilizational identity. But with the Ram Mandir, which has been a struggle of 500 years, is now established. Okay. Then another thing that his administration and Prime Minister Modi did is that he started this Bhagavad Gita diplomacy. So what he did now, what they do is that whenever some leader comes, they gift Bhagavad Gita to the heads of the state. They don't give the replica of Taj Mahal. India has stopped exporting its colonial era identity and started exporting its civilizational one. Then, if you look into G20 nameplate, it's Bharat. At 2023 New Delhi Summit, India's official nameplate read Bharat, not India. 197 world leaders saw it. There was no debate about it. It's civilizational restatement in 6 letters. And then he started to promote what? He started to promote certain things like National International Yoga Day. Yoga, temple, Sanskrit as a language. I mean, Sanskrit is being spoken and adopted all over the world now. Then he repositioned India with the soft power. Then, right? And these are the things that actually represent India's real civilizational awakening. This civilizational power status reminds India of what India was uh, before its late downfall, or whatever you want to call it. How India ran things, how the Indian order or the Vedic world order was. Okay, so lots of things were done, and at the national level, like when he inaugurated the new parliament, right? New parliament is built, so you have to think about it. The old parliament, the British era, the system was gone. The new parliament is built. It was inaugurated May 2023 with Senegal's. This is a sacred scepter, and this is how you do it. You have to remind people of their own strength. So what's the beauty of it? India's civilizational beauty is that India itself represents simultaneously ancient, cutting edge, 5,000 years of civilizational heritage. Everything is there. And the beauty of it is that it is a continuous living civilization. Indian civilization has never been destroyed. You have to understand this. All right, it has never been destroyed. India's old cities like Kashi, Prayag, they are still there. They're all continuous cities. They are continuous living civilizations. That's the beauty of it. Okay, and that was needed to be revived. And when you revive something like that, it only increases the patriotism. Why? Because India's primary identity is the Sanatan identity. And the moment you take that away from India, you're taking away the soul of Bharat. When you take away the soul of Bharat, then it ceases to exist. Look at all these South American countries, all these Latin American countries. I'm just going to give you a simple example of these Latin American countries. What happened to them? Spanish went over there, Portuguese went over there. You not a single Latin American country can tell you what is their native language is. Most of them speak Spanish or Portuguese. And that's what they believe. That's what they believe. They believe that that's their actual origin. When in reality, Spanish and Portuguese from Europe, they went over there to destroy their identity so that they can speak the Spanish and Portuguese. Look at Mexico. Mexico's primary culture is Mayan culture. That language is not even spoken in Mexico. It's Spanish. How can Latin America and Europe, they are on the two other ends? So how the language got there in the first place? Same thing is happening in Africa too. After the dawn of this whole nation states, the whole concept of nation states after the Westphalia Treaty, the nation states actually was created to uh, create the divide so that ruling becomes a lot easier. Otherwise, lots and lots of African countries, two African countries, probably they have the same language and all, but they don't know it. Lots of them actually speaks French. I mean, I have talked to quite a few African folks from, some from Senegal and all that. I mean, I asked them, hey, what's your original language? What's your national language? Like French. I was like, why you don't look like French and you don't sound like French. So what is it? So he told me something. I can't remember the name, but he said that, yeah, the history and this and that. I was like, yeah, I know. I left it at that, but that's what matters. Okay, you lose your own entity, entire identity. Look at Pakistan. What's happening in Pakistan? Pakistanis try to hide their history. They try to hide everything all over. They think that somehow they're Arabic, and Arabics thinks that they're slaves, they're converts. They don't even like them, but still they're there. That's the situation of Pakistan. Pakistan is not as such. Pakistan's primary problem is the identity crisis. Pakistan's problem is not economic or anything. Pakistan is in crisis because of its own identity. But anyways, guys, so this is what Prime Minister Modi did. Another thing, that is a civilizational revival, and that has established India as a civilizational great power. Okay. Now let's come down to the final reason why I think that Prime Minister Modi is the most consequential leader of the 21st century. And the reason is the long shadow of Prime Minister Modi. His impact on the world will outlast his era. That's the thing. Because why is that? Why? Because he did not just win the elections or something. Okay. He made systemic changes into India, the complete transformation from ground zero, the changes that go way beyond the vote bank politics. So these are the systemic changes that may continue shaping India long after he has gone from the office. Like, for example, the civilizational identity. You think that he will be, once he's gone from the office, then there will be no civilizational identity. That's not gonna happen. It will be there. Look at the Ram Mandir. He built that. You think that somebody can change that? No, that's not gonna happen. Right? The changed global perception of India. You think that all the companies, all the businesses, everything, India will stop becoming third largest economy? No, because those were the systemic changes that were made at the ground level. And because of that, India will become the third largest economy and a great power, right? Then look at the strategic autonomy, that is the mainstream in India's foreign policy. That's not gonna change. Then look at the Prime Minister Modi's approval rating, consistently 70% and above among all the major world leaders. You name it. Just look at the list. He has been recognized by numerous global leaders. Then he has been awarded so many awards from different countries. Then his administration has created the digital public infrastructure like UPI schemes and all that, right? It's a global model which is studied by other countries. Then COVID hit. Think about it. I mean, I haven't even talked about COVID yet, but during the COVID, everyone said that, oh, India will be the most hit country. That was the researchers in the Western country, they said. All the researchers in the Western country, they say India will be the most hit country, but actually it was the United States. In fact, the most of the Western countries that were the worst hit. Then Prime Minister Modi, he's recentered the civilizational identity in Indian politics. That be who you are. Then his administration, what? He strengthened the India's long-term position in the emerging multipolar world. India is now a pole. You cannot ignore that. I've made a video on this thing actually. The four great powers. Why world has only four great powers. And the primary criteria in that is that a great power is a country that cannot be coerced into doing something that they don't want to do. And there are only four countries that are this way. That is US, India, China, and Russia. Other than that, there is no other country who cannot be coerced into doing something. And then, I mean, Prime Minister, other thing is that, see, he has a vision. The man sees things. He is talking about vision to 2047. He's not even going to be alive in 2047. Why would he even care about it? Why would he even say those things? It's simple that he has his own vision of Bharat. Okay? His vision is that India is preparing for the next 1,000 years, not next election cycle, not 5-10 years. India is preparing for the next 1,000 years as a great power. That's what it is, meaning that going back to its past glory. It's already there, but you have to establish 40% of the economic contribution and all that good stuff, right? So this is all these things. And this is why I always said that consequential leaders, they do not win the elections. They alter the destiny of a country. Okay. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you liked it. Please do like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys in another video. Take care.